Do you know that not too many years ago, 1995, Halloween night, 70 witnesses observed the ghost of Clarence Darrow during a tour on Halloween night? There was video taken that evening. It's been used on various documentaries on television. Paul Harvey featured the incident in a rest of the story, and the man leading the tour that night will be our guest, famous ghost hunter Richard Crowe.
Is he anywhere in sight?
For the hour. I don't see him yet, but he said he'd be here around 10-ish, so keep an eye out for him. And we'll spend some time talking about ghost stories and how he became the most famous ghost hunter of them all. So that's coming up. Any old business to take care of before we go forward? Yes. Yeah, we have a few seconds here.
Okay.
Anything you want to catch up on?
No, the producer was giving us a rap like a minute ago, so I didn't think we had any time left, so I'm unprepared. So
Kristen Decker's not with us tonight because she's trick-or-treating, I imagine. Do we know what she's going as? Do we have any idea? We don't. I think she's dressed as Jim Weiser, actually, if I'm not mistaken. But we have young Craig Collins here sitting in the producer's chair, who's indicating that something is moving.
Getting ready to happen.
There's a vibe. Do you feel a vibration next to you?
There's a vibe here.
Okay, Marianne, take a look now at the empty guest chair. This is going to be wild. Just keep looking at the chair.
Okay.
Now you see the white mist. See the white mist?
Oh yeah, it's materializing. Oh my God,
it's morphing into our guest. There he is,
Richard Crowe,
the original ghost hunter. Nice to see you again.
Glad to be with you guys again.
Nice entrance.
Yeah.
Enjoyed that.
I like the way you just appeared.
People in Chicago have heard you on the radio, seen you on television for years and years and years. This is, the 37th year you've done the Halloween and other ghost tours, right?
Right. I started my tours in 73. Then I got discovered by Eddie Schwartz back in 74, began to do radio in 74, and it just fit in so nicely with the Halloween season that I'm a perennial guest around Halloween, and I appreciate being here today.
And you're doing this all year, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, a little bit more about how it all started. You say Eddie discovered you. Is that when he was doing all nights on GN?
Right. No, that was actually at a previous station.
IND?
You mentioned that. Right. IND.
Yeah, we can only mention their initials.
Last three.
Initials, so we can't mention the name.
Right.
To mention the initials. And so how did he find you? What
happened? Well, I started doing tour. I did a tour for my geography professor at DePaul University, Dr. Richard Houck, and that was for the geography department. That was the very first time a tour by bus of haunted places had ever been done, and got a lot of pub back then. And then from that first one, I did a couple more tours. When spring of 74 came around, not only did I start doing tours on a semi-regular basis, but I was contacted by some press. And John Ziamek from the old Daily News contacted me and wanted to go on a ghost hunt. And so we went up to near Bristol, Wisconsin, actually, to the site of a alleged gangster killing. And all of us observed, myself and John and my two guides, we all observed these bluish-gray silhouette-shaped forms running back and forth on the edge of the field where the house had stood previously that was a gangster safe house. And there was a big article in the newspaper at that time, and Eddie spotted that, contacted me, and that's how I managed to do late night. And love radio, of course. Love radio more than TV, actually, because we got more time to be laid back and tell stories properly.
Sure.
And so that's how it began. And so I combined my business interests with entertaining people with different radio spots when I was invited to come along to different shows, and it all worked very well.
Why was it your interest? What about it made it interesting to you?
Marianne, a lot of kids have an interest in the supernatural and unsolved mysteries and things like that. So it was always just a hobby of mine, an interest of mine. You know, when I was a boy, we'd go on vacation road trips, and I'd make my dad drive 100 miles out of the way to go to an Indian burial ground or some historic landmark that was odd and unusual. And but it always stayed with me. And when I went to DePaul University, because I constantly worked it into the classwork any way I could, doing term papers on the topic, and actually I had some very good articles thrown off the refused for the school newspaper because they said nobody cares about this stuff. Aha!
Wow!
They certainly do. But was always making a racket here, so to speak, and brought attention to myself, and that's how the whole thing began with the tour for the university, which led to many more people knowing about me and hearing about me.
So when you began and you had this interest, did you always believe?
Well, here's the interesting thing. I thought where there's smoke, there's got to be fire. And I'm going, wait a minute, these people I'm talking to, they're telling me about personal experiences. They're reliable. They seem to be sane, normal people, family members, friends, relatives. And wait a minute, why have I never had an experience? So I made it a point to try to study, well, where are they having the experiences? So I became very place-oriented, looking for the haunted places. And then I figured if I could be at the right place at the right time, I could have the experience. And that's what spurred me to this geographical type approach to things.
And did you ever have an experience?
Oh, sure. One of my earliest experiences when I was in college, and one of my Sister Barbara's friends was a cousin of a family called Quinn. Mary Alice Quinn became known as the Chicago Miracle Child. She died in 1935. And she was only 14 years of age, was buried at Holy Sepulchre Cemetery, out where the real Mayor Daley's buried. And
the real Mayor Daley.
Well, don't confuse the two. And so she's buried out there, and I knew that this particular girl was considered to have miraculous powers and that she would cure people of illnesses and things, and a sign of her existence or her interception here of your prayers was a scent of roses. So I'm going out there to visit the grave one day just out of curiosity. And did you ever try to find a grave in a cemetery without knowing the precise spot?
Yes.
Yep. Pretty
it's
darn
impossible.
hard. It is. Well,
yeah.
There you go. Impossible. So I knew it was Section 7. I'm driving along Section 7. I'm going, I'll never find it. And all of a sudden, the car fills up with a scent of roses. I stopped the car, and there it was, 40 feet away from my car, the Quinn tombstone, and that's where Mary Alice was buried.
Were there roses on any of the other gravestones?
It was a psychic scent.
What's a psychic scent?
I mean, it's a scent that's not caused by anything in this world. So, in other words, it's a ghost scent, if you will.
So, you started to smell this.
Right, and that's what brought me to that particular spot. Because most people, because I'm afraid of we're being handicapped by watching these Hollywood movies for the last 25, 30 years or so, where it's all over the top with Freddy Krueger and three-dimensional imagery.
Oh, yeah.
We always think ghosts are visual, but that's not the case. Ghost encounters can be olfactory, they can be auditory, they can be tactile, they can be like a cold spot or a tap on your shoulder, whatever. All the different senses can be accosted from the other side.
Were you a skeptic before, Richard? Now, you were an English lit major in college, right?
Right.
So you weren't necessarily going down this road before.
No, my interest in English literature, well, I was interested, of course, in supernatural literature, Edgar Allan Poe, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Ambrose Bierce, authors like that. But literary criticism was always what I got going. Where did these authors come up with these concepts and ideas, and what do they draw from? Was it from local folklore or whatever? So that was my approach on my English literature side. And then on the geography side, of course, it's the places and travel and routing and all that.
And the ghost tour, which now, no matter where you go in the world, somebody's got a ghost tour, but nobody really did it before you, did they?
No. The very first tour by bus of haunted places anywhere in the world, right here in Chicago. I think they may have had a walking tour in London earlier than the year in 73, before I started. But the very first mechanized tour, motorized tour, was right here in Chicago. And that's quite odd because you would think, Transylvania, East End of London, Antebellum South, colonial New England, urban metro Chicago for ghosts? Well, of course, it is a viable idea.
We've been on the one in London. We've been on the big ghost tour. And in Charleston, South Carolina, you can do a horse-drawn carriage.
Different venues. Well, I do buses now and boats during the summer and walking tours in Chinatown. But because of the way Chicago's laid out, a bus is really your best way to take advantage of the situation.
Over the years, how many bizarre weirdos have you come across?
Well,
just when he's doing interviews, Marianne.
Let me give you two interesting examples. I did have a couple get married on my tour one day.
Really?
Right.
A surprise to you? Or
No. They asked if they could. I arranged to have a location we could stop at so they could get off the bus and get married.
What was the reason behind that?
They just liked the whole idea of being married on a supernatural tour, a ghost tour. And the other one, though, was a guy who brings his mother in a jar, her remains, and he wanted to know if he could scatter her ashes off the back of the boat for my supernatural boat cruise. But he sprang it on me that night, and I'm going, I don't know what the law is, but I'm going to be up topside with the captain telling stories, and what happens on the stern of the boat, I don't know about. So Going
that's a
right
good
ahead.
answer.
Yes.
The original full-time professional ghost hunter here in the Midwest, Richard Crowe, our guest on the WGN Sunday Night Radio special. I want Richard to tell us more of the more popular stories that people have been hearing from him over the years. And we'll tell you how to get in touch with him, too, because this is not just a Halloween night deal. It's all year round. It's always the ghost season for Richard Crowe. Bob Sirott and Marianne Murciano continuing right after this. Happy Halloween from the WGN Sunday Night Radio special. And Richard Crowe, ghost hunter, is our guest for the hour tonight.
My kids are, all three of them, from the time they were little. I never taught them this, but every time they go by a cemetery, they hold their breath. What's the deal with that?
Well, that's
I purposely drive really slow to see how long they're going to be able to hold it.
That's an old belief, like don't whistle past the cemetery, don't take a breath past the cemetery. It's an old folk belief, yes.
Well, what's the...
Don't take a breath because you might inhale a spirit.
Oh, well, that wouldn't be so bad, right?
And then your kids would be possessed when you got home, Marianne.
Yeah, well, I think they already are.
What would be a couple of the top tours over the years and the most famous stories around here, Richard?
If you want to start with a gangster story, because they're always popular here in this city, John Dillinger's Ghost is a very, very popular concept, and that's the Biograph Theater, the death spot of John Dillinger. Dillinger went to the Biograph Theater the last night of his life, July the 22nd, 1934. He watches Manhattan Melodrama, leaves the theater with his date, Polly Hamilton, and his date's landlady, Anna Sage, who had been the female Judas, unbeknownst to him, to turn him in, the woman in red. So they leave the theater. The FBI spots the woman in red. They open fire, and Dillinger's mortally wounded. He drops next to a Chinese chop suey carryout, the alley 2 doors to the south of the theater. That's where he bleeds to death there on the pavement. And that alley ever since has been considered quite haunted. When I went to DePaul University around the corner, it was always talked about that there was a bluish-gray silhouette-shaped form running, tripping, and falling on occasion in the mouth of the alley. A desperate ghost of Dillinger trying to get away, get down the alley. But then that segued into a different kind of a haunting. Now it's nothing visual. It is something that you feel, a cold spot, chill up your spine, goosebump sensation, that kind of thing that goes on from time to time at the alley. And I had a personal experience there myself in 2001. And that's when I had reporter Jackie Thomas contact me, want to interview me there at the alley. I brought my buddy Colin Cordwell from the Red Lion Pub along. 3 of us are at the alley on the anniversary, July the 22nd of that year. The clock is ticking down towards 10:30. And Colin said, I think we should say a prayer for the soul of John Dillinger. Well, good idea, I thought. And just as we're saying that silent prayer, the light above our head went out. Now, that could be a coincidence because I know that light, and it's often on a short. But that light went out precisely at 10:30. Coincidence? Perhaps that. But the 3 of us simultaneously all had at the same moment chills go up our spines from our tailbone to the scalp and top of our head. And that could not be coincidence. We all had this very interesting experience on the anniversary, the precise time of Dillinger's death, right there at the same spot where Dillinger died.
That's cool. I have a couple of questions. One is, what happened to the date? Dillinger's date.
Oh, Dillinger's date.
Yeah.
Polly Hamilton?
Yeah, Polly.
She later married, settled down,
no, but
and
I
led
mean,
a normal
on
life.
that night.
Oh.
Was she standing next to him?
The 2 women, Dillinger breaks away from them, and he's running away, and I'm sure they were probably in a state of shock because it wasn't supposed to come down that way. The FBI were not supposed to shoot him down in cold blood as they did. That's not what Anna Sage was told. She was just told they're going to take him, and supposedly everybody thought that the FBI was going to walk into the theater with the .45 behind a box of popcorn and just saunter up to Dillinger, put a gun to his head, and arrest him. Right. But that's not the way that J. Edgar Hoover wanted it to come down.
And before you had this experience that you just described, that was an experience for you and the people you were there with, did you believe? I mean, you were taking people to that spot because it was supposedly haunted.
Exactly.
Did you believe?
Yes, I believe because I thought my witnesses were credible that I had talked to previously, and I thought that their experiences as described to me were certainly within the realm of possibility, and that's why I used that site on my tour, and eventually got my own personal verification when it happened to me.
You're running Dillinger tours in Northwest Indiana now, too, aren't you?
Right. thankfully, because of the Johnny Depp movie, Public Enemies, money went into Crown Point to rehab the old jail where Dillinger escaped with a wooden gun. And now that's available for tours. And I do a package where we go out to Hammond to the Dillinger Museum, which is home of the state of Indiana, the old Joe Pinkston Museum from downstate from Brown County. It's now up here in northwest Indiana. So we go out there for a guided tour, a special tour of the museum. We go to Crown Point, and we have the guided tour of the old jail, which is very haunted. And then next to that, in the old criminal courthouse building, we stop for a nice Italian lunch, and they've got a restaurant in the basement of the criminal courthouse building. So it's a great little package with 3 very popular destinations.
That sounds like such a fun thing to do. Yeah, any time of year. And why is that jail so very haunted?
Well, first of all, jails usually are haunted because of all the sadness and tragedy that takes place in the jail. But some really unusual stuff happened there. Back in the 80s, when I first discovered the spot, when I learned about the jail being available for tourism and all that, it was owned by a man by the name of Ed Kiss, a restaurateur that had the restaurant next door. And he told me the place was haunted, so I went out there to check it out. And I'll never forget the night I was out there with, we had some local Northwest Indiana radio. We had some newspaper people from the area, and I had a couple psychologists, friends of mine, and people that had various skills as photographers and so forth. We spent the night in the jail, and that night, while we were there in the jail, because it was such a wretched condition, we were mostly in the front section, away from the cell block area, which is in very poor condition. But we heard the sounds back there of somebody running about, cell doors slamming shut and open and so forth, as if somebody was trying to escape. And that's
and they weren't?
Amazing sounds, which could not be replicated because those cell doors were jammed shut because of rust, because the place had been open to the elements for a number of years. Now they've got it working again because of the money from the production company. But back then, there was no way those cell doors could have slammed shut, but we plainly heard those sounds.
It's veteran Chicago ghost hunter and author Richard Crowe, and this is like his Christmas, Halloween. This is his season.
Merry Halloween.
It's the 37th anniversary of his famous ghost tours. We're going to talk more about and we've got to do a resurrection.
Oh, absolutely.
You have to talk about that.
Yeah, and I have some other ghost questions.
Okay. Bob Sirott, Marianne Murciano, and the WGN Sunday Night Radio special rolls on. Ghost hunting tonight on the special, and our guest is Richard Crowe, who does these tours all year round. And are you still talking to movie and TV people sometimes who want to do material based on the supernatural, Richard?
Yes, I do. And in fact, a very good friend of mine is Bob Zamuda, who runs Comic Relief, and I've known Bob since we went to college together at different colleges. I went to DePaul. He was at Northeastern University, Illinois, or whatever they call it, and up there next to Bohemian National Cemetery.
Oh, right.
And Bob and a guy by the name of Joe Triani, who's now Dr. Joseph Triani, would run that UHF television program back in the 70s called News of the Psychic World.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was a wild program.
Was that deal Chuck Collins was part of
News of the
well?
Psychic World, actually, it was Dr. Martingale from the university that was the head of the department who was involved in that, who started that, and then he passed on because, unfortunately, tried to cure himself psychically rather than go to real medicine. And that could be a downer.
That could be
so
deadly.
you stayed in touch with...
Oh, yeah, so I've been in touch with... that was how I met Bob. And then I've done things like the American Booksellers Association convention. I've had Stephen King, the horror author, not Steve King for the radio station, but Stephen King, the horror author, take the tour. So I've met some very interesting people.
What did he think?
You know, he didn't identify himself at first. I found out later.
You're kidding.
He had passed on my number to a bunch of people, and they're calling up going, yes, Stephen King gave me your number here.
That's so
I want to take the tour.
Very cool. Okay, now I have a few ghost questions for you. First of all, people love ghost stories. Why do people love ghost stories?
Why do people love ghost stories? Well, a couple of reasons. I think, first of all, because it's beyond the normal. I mean, it's beyond the everyday activity and events that are taking place, and because ghost stories are local. You can have a local ghost. You can have your own house haunted. You can have next door haunted, the cemetery down the road. So it's something that you can interact with without getting on a jet plane and flying to Egypt for the pyramids or Scotland for the Loch Ness Monster. It's something you can get locally.
What exactly is a ghost?
See, when I use the word ghost,
or spirit, or whatever.
Exactly. I use the term as an umbrella word, meaning any kind of contact with an entity that's deceased, that's beyond, and they make contact with us through all the different senses, so you never can tell for sure how it's going to happen, whether it be a scent or hearing or feeling, whatever, or visual. And so it encompasses a broad area of possibilities. So ghost can mean, it's from the old German for Geist, which is another word for spirit, but it's just a way of contacting the dead.
Hollywood remains fascinated with this topic. Every year, there's at least one movie revolving around this topic.
Right. Unfortunately, a lot of them are fairly poor in my estimation. A lot of it went downhill after Blair Witch Project, which gave me a migraine watching that with the jerky camera motion.
Oh, yeah, give me a migraine.
But Clint Eastwood has a project out now that he directed, right, with Matt Damon.
Hereafter.
Yeah, Hereafter.
I don't know. I haven't seen it.
And there have been several others recently.
But I'd like to go back to the classics like Ray Milland with The Uninvited and things like that. That's what I grew up on. Yeah.
What are ghosts trying to do or to tell us?
That's if you believe that they actually are aware of us. Or are we just interacting with another dimension and they're doing their own thing and we're doing our own thing and we just sometimes overlap? So there's a possibility that they don't even recognize us. But then there's also a possibility, which actually a probability in some cases, that they are trying to give us information. They're trying to give us a bit of information that might be useful in our life.
Like what? Give me an example.
Don't get on Flight 191. Things of that nature. So there is this psychic side, this prophecy side of things. I also collect material in that vein, of course, not just the plain old ghosts, but any kind of strange aspect of fate and whether or not there's some psychic interaction in our lives.
Do people sometimes go ahead, Maria?
No, go ahead.
Are there those who take what you do too seriously? And you're a great storyteller, and I know you weave in a sense of fun in all this. But what about the folks who have lost someone and they want to contact the great beyond? How do you handle that?
I get contacted by people like that all the time, and what I tell them is you cannot force the contact. All you have to do is be a good observer. Just sit back, it'll happen. If it's going to happen, it's going to occur. Plus, I also believe that ghosts aren't going to just be showing up at our beck and call because we want them to. Most spiritual. But
if you're running a tour, you want them to show up at your beck and call.
Well, but if I were that good, I'd be in Vegas, Marianne. But my point being that you don't want them just to show up to prove to you that they exist, and then they're going to be gone. You'd rather wait till you're going to step off traffic and get hit by an 18-wheeler and the ghost pulls you back and saves you. You want to have that contact possibility saved for a appropriate time, an important time of your life.
Are you getting leads all the time? Are there new cases of new ghosts? Do you watch the news and see that somebody was murdered and then go to that spot to see if you feel anything?
Let me give you a good example of that. In fact, sometimes it's places I've been very familiar with, been going there for years, and only found out things only broke here in recent times. Just yesterday, I was at Marcello's restaurant on North Avenue, if you know that great restaurant up there just east of Halstead. And I've been going there now for over 10 years. In fact, they make my ghost cookies for my special Halloween tours. And then I just find out within the last year that they've got a ghost there. But the ghost that has been encountered there at the restaurant predates, because the restaurant's only been there since 1993. It well predates that. And it's like a woman in a old pioneer-type outfit with long dress down to the floor, long hair, apron. It's somebody that would have been around in the days of the original Goose Island settlement of the Irish, or the Germans around the St. Michael's Church just to the east of there. So it's somebody from back there probably right about the time of the Civil War, just afterwards. That's from the dress and the description, that's what we can figure out.
So do you get so different people see the same thing, the same woman with the same outfit, or it's just one person and then...
See, this is what I would call a grade A sighting, because number one, it's a visual. Okay. And secondly, there are three different witnesses. So it's not just based on one person's credibility. You're going to have three different people you can contact, you can interview, and check facts one against the other.
You travel all over the world now looking for stories to tell, but we still have some of the best here. And of all the stories, is Resurrection Mary number one? Is that what people keep asking you about more than anything else?
Resurrection Mary is certainly the number one ghost story around Chicago. And when I do a tour, I save the Resurrection Mary story for the last. It's like the grand finale. And when I say, and now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start looking for Resurrection Mary, go on the trail of Resurrection Mary, there's usually cheers in the back of the bus.
It's like this is your hit record. Well, you're going to do now in concert.
I mean, no, I have to give her the credit. I mean, it's Resurrection Mary's popularity is such that her mere mention of her name will have people break out in applause.
So tell the story.
Well, first let's start with the legend of Resurrection Mary that probably most of the listeners have grown up with over the last 70 or so years. And that is that back in the 1930s, there was this beautiful blonde, blue-eyed young lady on the south side of Chicago, and she would love to go to dances and parties as many nights per week as she could get out of the house to dance the night away to the big band sound of that era. And by going out night after night, maybe 4 or 5 times a week, eventually it cost her life. She's coming back from an event one night, and the car she's riding in is involved in an accident, and she's killed, and her grieving family takes her to a Southside funeral home, and there she's prepared for burial. Laid out in her party dress with her dancing slippers on her feet, she's buried a few days later at Resurrection Cemetery, southwest of Chicago, in Justice, Illinois, Roman Catholic, primarily Polish American. Laid to rest out there. Would have been the end of the story had it not been for those dancing slippers, because it's like a ghostly Cinderella story at this point. I'm sure it's those slippers that caused her to come back and return to the dances, clubs, halls, and parties that she went to when she was alive, but now she's a ghost on borrowed time. So now, when she shows up, she's a ghost. The guy she's dancing with doesn't know it. He asks if she will accept a ride home, and when she does, on their way home that night, she'll either disappear as they drive by Resurrection Cemetery, or she'll ask to be let out of the car, run up the front gates, disappear there. Variations on that story. So this is how many of the tales have been told over the years, and for most it's an urban myth and legend and folk tale, no more than that. Had it not been for the fact that there are dozens of people out there that I've interviewed, and I'm sure there are others I have not even found yet, who can confirm that they had an experience like that. That
they were the guy and driving her home, right, and then she just disappeared?
And then, of course, it's evolved a bit here, too, but it always involves beautiful woman, Archer Avenue, Resurrection Cemetery, dancing, something involving those key elements. For instance, the big case, I think, is one from 1979, when a cab driver from O'Hare picked up a fare at O'Hare, drops him out in the Payless area. He gets lost, doesn't know where he is. He's driving up Archer Avenue. He passes by the Willowbrook Ballroom, and as he's passing by the ballroom, it's emptying out for the night. And where Flavin and Roberts Road touch, this is just to the south of Justice. This is in Willow Springs. Where the two roads touch, there's a bus stop. And he sees a beautiful woman. He says, "Lady, get in the back seat. Help me get to the north side. Give me directions. I'll give you a free ride where you want to go." She gets in the back of the cab. 2 minutes up the road, she says, "This is the place." He turns to ask her what she means. She's no longer in the back seat of the cab. There 1 second.
And he didn't hear a door slam.
They're in motion. I mean, they're driving along. So she's gone. And he's so shook by that he winds up taking the next day off work. He calls up the ballroom. He calls up police agencies. He winds up calling newspapers. And he gets a sympathetic ear when he talks to Bill Geist, who was writing back then for the Suburban Trib in Hinsdale. And Bill Geist interviews Ralph, the cab driver. And when he interviews him, he calls me up, interviews me as well. And Bill tells me, I don't believe in ghosts, but I got to believe the story with Ralph, the cab driver. And I think Bill Geist, he did 2 columns on it. He was the right guy to break the story, too, when you think about it, because his last name in German means ghost.
Oh, very, very perfect.
Have you ever been scared, Richard?
I have been puzzled. I have been bewildered. I suppose I've been a little bit scared, but that was down in Louisiana at a old-time plantation house where I had some friends spending the night, the Myrtles Plantation. If you've ever heard of that spot, upriver from Baton Rouge and St. Francisville, Louisiana. And there have been 10 untimely deaths on that location from the latter 1700s, and about every room of the mansion is haunted. It's almost like a Vincent Price movie. And I was spending time there with my friends. I was at the room at the top of the stairs. It's almost like a horror movie cliche. Mm-hmm. And I'm there with a Cook County cop buddy of mine, Chuck. So Chuck's on the four-poster because I was way too tall for that, and I'm in the daybed. And I said, Chuck, turn the lights off. I can't sleep. And Chuck said, no way. And he's laying there in bed clutching his rosary beads. Cook County cop, right? And I said, Chuck, what are you doing with the rosary beads? You're Lutheran. But he's laying there in bed. And then I dozed off, I thought. And I'm laying on my back, and I feel something in the palm of my hand. I look, and there was a silver woman's ring. And I look at it, wow, where'd that come from? So I take the ring with my left hand, put it on the little finger, went up to the first knuckle, and then I knew I did something wrong because a shock goes up my finger, my arm, into my body, and I'm paralyzed. And it took every ounce of strength that I could do to summon up the words, summon up the strength to yell, Chuck, help me. By screaming, I broke the spell. I jump out of bed, run across the hall to the room where other friends of ours were staying. Chuck's right behind me. Bang, bang, bang. Open up, Bob. Open up, Alice. And so we got in the next room, and I explained what happened. And believe it or not, Bob had been having a dream at the time. He was sleeping when suddenly I'm making the racket on the door. And Bob across the hall, a lawyer, very down-to-earth guy, he says, I was having a dream, and in my dream I was walking down the stairs to the first floor, and there was a woman with a shawl on or something, shroud on, and he reaches out to touch her, and he feels a ring on her hand, then he wakes up. So the ring in the element of his dream, and of course I had what would be called a waking dream. It was not reality because there was no ring on my finger. Nonetheless, it's like we interacted with the past, and that's the most scary kind of a ghost story to me. It's like some kind of an old Hitchcock type activity where you're interacting with the past.
Marianne, cancel our vacation plans for Louisiana for the plantation.
So, can we decide to be ghosts someday and come back? What are your plans? Where will you come and haunt?
I'll probably across the street at the Billy Goat or somewhere fun like that.
Okay, right. Someday.
Someplace I had a lot of fun at, yes.
You're in a haunted house. You live in a haunted house, don't you?
Well, I bought a house in Oak Lawn. The previous owner, Don LaRoche, owns like 4 original House of Pancakes around, and he was moving out to Crystal Tree. You probably know that big development out southwest. And so I just bought it because it was a nice big house, and there was room for my library, for all my knickknacks and collectibles that I picked up over the years. Then I found out after the fact that it's haunted. Oh. And for a number of years, not anymore, but for a number of years when I first moved in, when I would walk in from the garage, it was an enclosed garage, into the den, I would hear voices. And they would be like male voices in conversation, almost as if somebody was sitting around playing cards at a table or something. But I couldn't make out the distinct individual words, but I just knew it was conversational and not anything nasty, but just like people having a conversation. And that went on for a number of years that I had that kind of experience, but there have been other things there as well. And I'll tell you, the kids are still afraid of the house in the neighborhood, and not that many trick-or-treaters come around because it's got quite a reputation. But maybe because I put that witch on a broomstick weather vane on top of the house.
Because they know you live there. Because they know Richard Crowe lives there. Richard Crowe does Chinatown walking tours, lectures, theme parties, out-of-state packages, bus tours, summer boat tours, and he's got
the book.
The book is the Chicago Street Guide to the Supernatural, and there's a DVD also about the ghosts of Chicago. You can find out about all of this on the website, ghosttours.com, ghosttours.com. And Richard, when we were doing Fox Thing in the Morning, you were always one of the best guests, and
thank you.
Same is true here on the radio. It's good to catch up with you.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, guys.
And you can vaporize now, and we'll talk to you again probably next year at this time.
Happy Halloween.
Back in a moment with a few final thoughts after this on the WGN Sunday Night Radio Special.
When you think limo, think AMS.
Promotional consideration for the Sunday Night Radio Special is provided by AMS Limousine. 847-446-5148. That's how you call AMS Limousine. 847-446-5148.
Wrapping up another WGN Sunday Night Radio special. Marianne, you're giving me a look. Like, what's the matter with you? Why? What's the problem? Did I do something?
Because you're sitting here with your arms extended out.
I'm stretching. I'm just stretching.
But you're stuck in the stretch. Are you trying to show me your muscles?
No, it's just...
What?
I don't know, it's just... that's one of the things about radio. I can't do this when I'm doing the news on TV.
I think
People
you
would
should.
think I'm nuts.
Well, maybe Robin would just take your hand and just get it out of her face. When you do that. Cause...
I was actually fascinated with the gigantic apple you're eating, and you're about a quarter of the way through it.
And I know.
What is that, like a 10-pounder?
It's so weird how big it is, but it's a Honeycrisp apple, and
it's the season, isn't it?
It's the season, and there are no apples. I don't even like apples. I really don't like apples. I hate to say, but a Honeycrisp apple, I eat one every day now, until the season's over.
You're not quite halfway through that one, so let me check that because it's Halloween night and the pranksters.
There's nothing in this.
And by the way.
I would like to bob for apples someday.
Okay, I tell you what, we can do that later after. See what's in the corner of the studio? See the cans of shaving cream I've stacked up there?
What's that for?
Well, we're just going to go around in the offices of the Tribune Tower, trick or treat, and there's nobody there now, so we'll just foam up some of the offices.
You should not even say that, because what if tomorrow morning we get up and then the offices of the Tribune Tower were really full of shaving cream or eggs or whatever?
I'll say ghosts. And then Richard Crowe will lead a tour of the Tribune Tower this time next year. How about that guy, huh?
Oh, he's unbelievable. Yeah.
Chicago Supernatural Tours. He's been doing this for 3 decades.
Such a great storyteller.
Yeah,
I want to tell stories the way he does.
He's the guy, and that's who you get on the tours. He's got a couple people working with him, but everybody wants him. Everybody wants him, and you'll get him on one of the tours. Haunted spots by bus. He was the first to do this anywhere, as he mentioned. And again, if you want to get in touch with him, find out more about him, his tours, the book, the DVD, it's ghosttours.com. Ghosttours.com for Richard Crowe. So, Marianne, I believe this will take care of things here for another week on the old special.
Okay. It's nice to see you on the radio, Bob.
Thank you, and good to be with you. And will you be here next week at 10 o'clock so we can meet up again like this?
Yeah, on Friday, I think I'm actually going to be working with you over at that other place, at Fox.
Well, that's Friday night.
Yeah, this Friday coming up, at 9 p.m. Yeah.
Fox thing in the evening.
Yeah. Whatever happened to that show?
I'm not sure. But you were never officially fired, though, were you?
No. That's why I'm showing up on Friday, because
you were on vacation.
Nobody has ever fired me. I just stopped getting paid.
So when the security says, "What are you doing here?" you say, "I work here."
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's the other guy that got officially fired. But I don't think they even did that with me. Now that I think about it.
No, they did. I remember the day.
Oh, uh-oh. Well,
like it was yesterday.
Don't tell them. Do they know I'm back? The WGN Sunday Night Radio special, produced and directed by Kristen Decker, and thanks to Craig Collins for doing the honors this evening.